The moment everyone froze was not when the alarm sounded, not when security rushed the lobby, but when the CEO's hands began to move in calm, deliberate motions that only one terrified man seemed to understand. In a room full of noise, suspicion, and judgment, silence fell in a different language, and in that silence, a single father's life was about to change forever. If you believe stories of kindness, second chances, and humanity still matter in this world, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. The hotel lobby was designed to impress, all marble floors and soft gold lights spilling from crystal chandeliers. People moved through it with purpose and entitlement, the kind that comes from expensive suits and confident footsteps. Nathan Cole stood out in the worst way possible. His jacket was worn thin at the elbows, his shoes scuffed from years of walking instead of driving, and his posture carried the weight of someone constantly bracing for rejection. He held his daughter's small backpack in one hand and clutched a folded stack of papers in the other, the edges creased from being opened and closed too many times. His daughter Lily waited nearby, sitting on the edge of a velvet chair, swinging her legs quietly, trusting her father without understanding the storm brewing around him. Nathan had not come looking for trouble. He had come because desperation had a way of shrinking pride. After losing his wife to illness 2 years earlier, life had become a careful balancing act of night shifts, school drop-offs, and unpaid bills. When the construction company he worked for shut down without warning, Nathan had been left with nothing but calloused hands and a child who depended on him completely. The hotel cleaning job was supposed to be temporary, a way to keep food on the table while he searched for something better. He had shown up early that day, uniform still damp from being washed in a sink at home, determined not to be late again. What no one else noticed was how his eyes constantly scanned the room, how his attention never strayed far from Lily. She had been born deaf, and Nathan had learned sign language not from books or classes, but from late nights watching online videos after she fell asleep, practicing until his fingers cramped. Their bond was built on patience, on silent jokes, on a shared understanding that the world was often unkind to those who did not fit neatly into it. The trouble began with a misunderstanding. A guest complained about a noise near the executive lounge. Security was called. Nathan, carrying a long-handled cleaning tool over his shoulder, had been moving too quickly, trying to finish his shift early so he could take Lily home before dark. To trained but tired eyes, the silhouette looked wrong. The tension escalated in seconds. Voices rose, people stepped back. Someone shouted a word that carried weight and fear, weapon. Nathan felt the shift in the air before he understood it. His heart began to hammer, not with guilt, but with panic. He raised his hands instinctively, the cleaning tool clattering to the floor, but fear does not always listen to reason. Lily stood up, confused by the sudden attention, her eyes wide as she searched her father's face for reassurance. Nathan tried to signal to her to stay calm, to stay still, but his hands were shaking now. Across the lobby, Eleanor Wright had just stepped out of a private elevator. As CEO of the hospitality group that owned the hotel, she was used to reading rooms the way others read emails. She noticed everything. The way conversations stopped. The way security's stance changed. The way one man's fear did not look like guilt, but like someone cornered by forces beyond his control. Most people saw a threat. Eleanor saw a father. She moved forward before her assistants could stop her. She had learned sign language years ago, not for business, but for her younger brother who had been deaf and had taught her that listening was not limited to ears. As she approached Nathan, she slowed her steps, softened her expression, and raised her hands where he could see them clearly. In a room bracing for violence, her calm felt almost defiant. Her fingers moved in careful signs, not rushed, not sharp. She asked if he was okay. She told him to breathe. She told him she could see he was scared. Nathan stared at her, disbelief cutting through his panic. No one had spoken to him like this in a long time. No one had taken the time to understand instead of assume. His response came automatically, hands forming words that spilled out faster than his thoughts. He explained about Lily, about the job, about the tool, about how he had never hurt anyone and never would. The most important part came last, his hands trembling as he signed the warning that had been misunderstood. He had been trying to tell his daughter to stay back because security's weapons frightened her. The danger was not in his hands, but in the moment spiraling out of control. Eleanor turned to the security team, her voice steady as she explained what had really happened. The tension did not vanish instantly, but it cracked, shoulders lowered. Weapons were eased back into holsters. Someone cleared their throat, embarrassed. The crowd exhaled collectively, realizing how close they had come to ruining a man's life over fear and assumption. Nathan sank into a chair, his legs barely holding him. Lily rushed to his side, wrapping her arms around his waist, pressing her face into his uniform. Eleanor crouched to their level, signing gently to Lily, telling her everything was okay now. Lily smiled shyly, the kind of smile that carries more trust than words ever could. What could have ended as a headline instead became a turning point. Eleanor did not leave after the crisis passed. She stayed, asking questions, listening to answers that were not always easy to give. She learned about Nathan's late wife, about the nights he skipped meals so Lily could eat, about the quiet dignity of a man who never asked for pity, only opportunity. She saw in him something she valued more than polished resumes or perfect suits: resilience. In the days that followed, Nathan expected nothing to change. Life had taught him not to hope too loudly. But hope arrived anyway, quietly, the way it often does. He was called into an office not to be reprimanded, but to be offered stability. A full-time position with benefits, flexible hours so he could be there for Lily, access to resources for parents of deaf children. It felt unreal, like stepping into someone else's life. The real change, however, was not the job. It was the way people began to see him. Staff members who once walked past without a glance now smiled and signed simple greetings they had started learning. Guests who noticed Lily would kneel to her level, trying awkward but sincere hand movements. The hotel, once just a place of survival, became a place of belonging. Nathan still struggled. Healing does not erase the past. Bills still came. Grief still surfaced in quiet moments. But he no longer carried it alone. Eleanor checked in not as a CEO, but as someone who remembered what it meant to be overlooked. She reminded him that asking for help was not weakness, and that being a good father was already the hardest and most important job he would ever have. Months later, as Nathan walked through the same lobby, Lily's hand tucked confidently into his, he thought about how close everything had come to falling apart. All it had taken was fear and misunderstanding. All it had taken to save it was one person willing to listen in a different way. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion can change the course of a life, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and engage with the channel. Your interaction helps spread stories that remind us of our shared humanity. And before this story ends, I want to ask you something personal. Please comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. Nathan never became famous. He never made headlines. But every night when he tucked Lily into bed and watched her drift into sleep with a smile on her face, he knew something priceless had been given to him. Not charity, not pity, but understanding. And sometimes understanding is the most powerful language of all. Life did not suddenly become easy after that day in the lobby. The world rarely transforms overnight, no matter how powerful the moment. What changed instead was something quieter, something deeper, like a crack in a wall that finally lets light in. Nathan woke up each morning with the same responsibilities, the same tired bones, and the same fear of failing the one person who depended on him most. But now, layered beneath that fear was something unfamiliar and fragile: hope. The hotel no longer felt like a place where he needed to make himself small. As he walked through its polished corridors, people greeted him with nods of recognition, not suspicion. Some staff members had started learning basic sign language during breaks, clumsy at first, laughing at their mistakes, but determined. Lily noticed before Nathan did. She tugged at his sleeve one afternoon, her face glowing as a receptionist signed a simple greeting to her. In that moment, Nathan realized this was more than a job. It was a place where his daughter was seen. Eleanor did not fade back into the distance as powerful people often do after a public moment of kindness. She stayed present, though never intrusive. She understood boundaries, understood pride. Whoa. She asked Nathan about his goals, not just for work, but for life. What did he want Lily to grow up believing about herself? What kind of world did he want her to inherit? These questions lingered with him long after their conversations ended, echoing during late-night dishwashing and early morning bus rides. Nathan struggled with guilt more than anything else. Guilt for not being able to give Lily the life her mother had dreamed of. Guilt for the nights he lost patience, for the mornings he felt too exhausted to smile. Eleanor never tried to erase that guilt. She reminded him that love measured in effort was still love, and that surviving was sometimes the bravest form of parenting. One evening, months after the incident, the hotel hosted a charity event focused on accessibility and inclusion. Nathan had not planned to attend. Crowds still made him uneasy, memories of that day resurfacing when rooms grew too loud, too crowded. But Lily insisted, her excitement impossible to ignore. She wanted to see the ballroom, the lights, the people she now recognized as friendly. Standing at the edge of the room, Nathan watched Lily move with a confidence he had not seen before. She signed with other children, laughed freely, her world expanding beyond the careful bubble he had built around her to protect her from disappointment. Tears stung his eyes, not from sadness, but from the realization that sometimes protection can become a cage, and sometimes letting go is an act of trust. Eleanor took the stage that night not as a CEO, but as a storyteller. She spoke about moments that redefine us, about how quickly fear can strip away our humanity, and how easily compassion can restore it. She never mentioned Nathan by name, never pointed him out, but he knew the story was theirs. The room listened, quiet and attentive, and for the first time in his life, Nathan felt like his pain had meaning beyond survival. After the applause faded, Eleanor approached him, her expression gentle. She told him that the company was expanding a program focused on inclusive employment and family support. She asked if he would consider being part of it, not as a symbol, but as a voice. The idea terrified him. He was not a speaker. He was not educated or polished. He was just a father trying to get through each day. Eleanor reminded him that authenticity carried more power than perfection. Nathan did not answer right away. That night, after Lily fell asleep, he sat by her bed and watched her chest rise and fall. He thought about the man he had been before loss carved hollows into his life. He thought about the man he was becoming. Slowly, carefully, he realized that his story might help someone else standing on the edge of despair, waiting for a sign that things could change. The first time Nathan spoke at a training session, his hands shook, his voice wavered. But as he talked about Lily, about learning sign language in the quiet hours of the night, about the fear of being misunderstood, the room leaned in. People listened not because he was flawless, but because he was real. By the time he finished, the silence that followed was not awkward. It was reverent. Lily watched from the back, her eyes shining with pride. She signed to him later that she was proud of him, her small hands moving with certainty. In that moment, Nathan understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. Life continued with its usual challenges. There were setbacks, days when money was tight, moments when grief resurfaced unexpectedly. But Nathan no longer felt invisible. He had learned that being seen did not require shouting, only honesty. He had learned that kindness, when practiced deliberately, could ripple outward in ways no one could predict. Years later, the memory of that day in the lobby still lingered, not as trauma, but as transformation. Nathan kept the cleaning badge from his first uniform tucked away in a drawer at home, a reminder of where he started and how close he came to losing everything. Lily grew older, more confident, her world rich with possibility. She dreamed freely, knowing her voice, spoken or signed, mattered. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that empathy can change lives in an instant, please take a moment now to like this video, share it, and engage with the channel. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need hope more than they realize. And before we end, please leave a comment below and tell us what part of this story stayed with you the most. Your thoughts help keep conversations like this alive. Nathan's life was never defined by that moment of fear, but by what followed. By a choice to understand instead of assume. By hands that spoke when words failed, and by the quiet truth that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is truly see another human being.